Hey, good morning. This is Jack Ryan, and welcome to another briefing on the COVID-19 virus and how it relates to law enforcement. And this morning I want to talk about information sharing. We all know that there's something called HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It's the privacy rule. However, notwithstanding that privacy rule, certain entities are allowed to share information where it's important to a government interest. And so I want to talk about that because the United States Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Civil Rights, has put out information regarding how this HIPAA rule applies to the sharing of information between dispatchers and EMS, between dispatchers and law enforcement, between health authorities and law enforcement, between health authorities and jails. So I think it's important to get a sense that this is information that can be shared, and just kind of talk about some of the exceptions that were already in HIPAA that the Office for Civil Rights, a part of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, has put out related to this to give examples. So one of the exceptions that's always been built in is when the disclosure is needed to provide treatment. In the case of, for example, let's say our EMS was called to a nursing facility or something of that nature, and was being asked to transport to the hospital because somebody was in danger of serious bodily harm or death even from this virus. So they were going to be moved from a skilled nursing facility to a hospital. Then certainly, this information is providing treatment. So in that case, it could be released. Also, when the information is required by law, hospitals can disclose this kind of information in accordance with state law that requires reporting of confirmed cases. Right now, we know the CDC and state health officials are tracking these on a daily basis. I got up this morning, and the first thing when I turned on the news, we have 124 confirmed cases in the state of Rhode Island. And so, again, that's information that's coming in from these hospitals, so obviously it does not violate HIPAA in any way. Also, covered entities, and covered entities is not a law enforcement agency. So remember, this is the situation where we are trying to get the information so we can share it with our people, whether it be EMS, whether it be law enforcement on the road, whether it be law enforcement in the jail. We want to be able to share the information. We have to get it from the health authorities first. So again, this is the exception that apply to the people that store this information, that have this information, and whether or not they can share it with us. So in some sense, our 911 centers, our communications people, we have to be able to provide this document, and I'm gonna provide a link for it, or provide the document, a copy of it in this video, and we'll certainly put it on our website. But one of the things that we have to do is make sure that our health facilities that have this information are aware that they can in fact share it, and there's several exceptions that apply. To notify a public health authority in order to prevent the control and spread or control the spread of the disease. So one of the things, we see this constantly in the news, that hospitals, doctors, testing facilities are notifying the local public health authority because we are trying to control the spread of this disease. So that's another exception that is available to the medical community that allows us to get this information. The Department of Human Services, Health and Human Services, also said when first responders may be at risk. So, if a first responder is going to be dealing with a person who is infected, then the health facility is able to provide that information to the first responders. So this would be police officers, deputies, anybody else who may be, in a situation where they're going to have to deal directly with a person who's infected or is tested positive, because that first responder is going to be exposed. So again, that to me is one of the key ones. If a first responder is going to be at risk, then obviously that information can be given. where it's necessary to give it to first responders to lessen a serious and imminent threat for the health and safety of a person or the public. And obviously, that's an exception that's been in HIPAA for a long time, but now we see the application in this COVID-19 virus spreading, so that the information has to be given to lessen the public health threat, because every contact for law enforcement, every contact for EMS, every contact at the jail is a potential exposure. So we have to make sure that that information is given, and we have to let our health facilities know. We don't want to get into an argument over, hey, we can't give you this information. This is healthcare information. We don't want to have those arguments. So we want to make sure that we're prepared to let our health facilities know, and at the same time that our dispatchers can ask questions, that our jails can ask questions, that our law enforcement folks can ask questions. At the start of the contact of people, they can ask them for healthcare information, and and basically it's not protected under HIPAA when those questions are asked. There's another exception in HIPAA that says when responding to a request for this type of information by a correctional institution or law enforcement official that has or is going to have custody of an inmate or another individual. So again, as long as it's necessary for providing the health care of the individual, the health and safety of that individual, other inmates, officers, employees, others present, or persons responsible for the transport or transfer of inmates. If it's needed for law enforcement on the premises of the correctional institution, obviously, correctional officers are going to be in contact. If it's necessary for the administration and maintenance of the safety, security, and good order of the correctional institution. So again, this briefing is really to let you know that there are exceptions here that apply. So those are the basic exceptions. There are some other considerations as well. The document itself provides a number of different examples, and one of the examples I think is important is this, that a hospital could provide. So in Rhode Island, for example, the hospital or the local public health authorities could actually supply the names and addresses of the 124 people that are infected. Now, the document tells us, and the commentary tells us, don't make a public list of it. We don't want to put that in the newspaper. That's not the idea. But if it was at the dispatch center, so there could be an alert, so that the officers responding, so that EMS responding can immediately have an alert, so they say, hey, 45 Rome Avenue, that house, somebody in that house has a confirmed case, so that officers and EMS know what they're walking into and the potential exposure before they get there. The commentary also tells us that the 911 center can ask screening questions, on whether somebody in the house has a cough, whether they have a fever, have they been having difficulty breathing, is there anybody of that nature in the house that law enforcement's going to come in or EMS is going to come in, so that extra precautions can be taken upon arrival at the house using personal protection equipment and all of those things that would lessen the exposure. Again, we would not want anybody to release publicly information that's confidential under state or federal law, but we do have to understand that in this emergency situation, the government interest is very high. And there are exceptions in HIPAA that allow medical entities to provide information to law enforcement, to 911 centers, that will help reduce the spread and consequences of COVID-19. Those exceptions have been in place for a long time. We also have some commentary that's coming out from the government, United States Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Civil Rights, some commentary that tells us how we might be able to use this information. But again, we don't want to publicly share it. This is on a need-to-know basis, really, and it's on a need-to-know for the protection of EMS, for law enforcement, for correctional staff, as well as other inmates that may be exposed, or any other person that may be exposed. So again, there are public safety exceptions to the HIPAA requirements, and certainly we should be looking at those and be looking at how we can share this information to help prevent the spread of this disease and also to ensure that our officers are not exposed. Thank you. As always, be safe, exercise all great care in the hygienic requirements, disinfecting your vehicles, disinfecting your workstations, dispatch centers, and please be careful of any potential exposures. Have a great day and be safe.